Tonight, friends, the midnight buffet becomes an Olympic event. 12 competitors, 12 disciplines, and one shuffleboard court that a retired physicist has already declared structurally unsound. 2 nights ago, friends, aboard the Via Oceanus fresh out of Miami, 6 couples who had never met found themselves at one round window table and went on a grand tour of the whole ship. Dining room to midnight buffet, the crow's nest to the robot bar, Casino Royale to the thermal spa, and finally the open deck where the sea lit up blue-green and a single shooting star fell straight down the glowing wake. 12 strangers stopped being strangers somewhere between the tiramisu and the Atlantic sky. Tonight is night 2. The ship is heading south into warmer water, and Buck Calhoun has a notion. The second night at sea has a different quality than the first. The first night you marvel that the ship moves at all, that this impossible city of steel is crossing an ocean and no one seems alarmed. The second night you begin to feel at home. The jazz in the dining room sounds familiar. The waiters remember how you take your coffee. The Atlantic outside the window is no longer a surprise. It is simply where you live. At table 7, after the second dinner, veal for Sal, salmon for Earl, 3 courses for Buck who couldn't choose. 12 friends sat with the particular contentment of people who have eaten very well and have nowhere they need to be.
Friends, I have had a thought.
That's always how the trouble starts.
Now hear me out. I've been thinking about this midnight buffet. This buffet that never closes. You walk up there at 2 in the morning and they've got hot dishes, cold dishes, a whole station just for desserts. And nobody judges what goes on your plate. Nobody. You could stack shrimp cocktail on a waffle and the world keeps spinning.
I would personally judge that.
What I'm proposing, the first annual Buffet Olympics. Everybody picks an event. Best dessert architecture, most creative combination, most rolls acquired. Sal, I'm looking at you.
I have been in training since dinner.
Buck Calhoun. It is 10:30 at night. We have been on our feet since 6 this morning.
Loretta, honey, we are retired. Every hour is ours. Not a single minute of this life is being wasted.
I find myself interested in the shuffleboard deck at this hour. More than I would have predicted.
Earl said yes. When Earl says yes, it is settled. I have been married to this man 52 years. He does not say yes unless he means it all the way through.
I'll want to assess the buffet layout before committing to a discipline. There may be optimization opportunities.
You are not reorganizing the dessert table, Walter.
I'm going to look at it. Looking is not reorganizing.
Antonio, the maitre d', drifted past with a water pitcher and absorbed all of this without changing his expression by so much as a millimeter. Because a man who has seated nervous strangers for 30 years has heard stranger ideas, though perhaps not at this hour, and perhaps not with quite this level of conviction.
The midnight buffet is fully stocked, Mr. Calhoun. The pool deck is open until 2. I will let the staff know to expect you.
Antonio, you are the finest man on this entire ship.
He says that to anyone who helps him do something I've already vetoed.
It is a privilege, Mrs. Calhoun.
And so, by the logic that had governed every expedition in this company, 12 friends rose from table 7 at 10:45 in the evening. A retired Texan led the way with his hat at an optimistic angle, and nobody said no, because after 2 nights, saying no to Buck Calhoun had started to feel like an activity for people with less interesting evenings. The midnight buffet of the Via Oceanus occupied the entire top deck of the ship behind the glass-roofed conservatory, and at this hour, 11 on a warm Atlantic night, it was lit up like a city that had forgotten to close. Steel chafing dishes gleaming, carved ice sculptures sweating gently in the warm air, a whole station devoted exclusively to cheeses that had opinions about themselves. There were maybe a dozen other passengers up at this hour, a young couple sharing a dessert at the far end, an older gentleman studying the bread display with the gravity of a man who had come a long way for this role, and then 12 new arrivals who had brought with them a Texan in a Stetson and apparently an official scorekeeping system.
Oh, would you look at this layout? The soup station is on the wrong side of the hot entrees. You want soup on the right, so people move left to the proteins, not backtrack. But the dessert situation is exceptional. They've got a creme brulee station. Gus, a creme brulee station.
Yep.
Properly blowtorched or holding? That is my only question.
She went to find out, and just as the rest of the company were spreading out to claim their disciplines, a man in a midnight blue blazer appeared at the entrance with the unstoppable energy of someone who had simply never considered going to bed.
Table 7, I heard from Antonio, Olympic athletes require a proper announcer. Marco Bellini, cruise director, at your service. What are the events?
Marco, partner, you are exactly what this ceremony needs. I am delegating you the opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, and I address you as champions, because the decision to be here at 11 at night already qualifies you. Welcome to the first annual Via Oceanus Buffet Olympics.
He's going to be worse than Buck.
Connie, no. He's going to be better.
I'd like to register a formal interest in the structural assessment category, if that's a category.
It is now Professor Whitfield, Theoretical Division. Consider yourself entered.
And so the first annual Buffet Olympics opened on the top deck of a cruise ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, with a cruise director who had apparently been waiting his whole career for someone to give him this assignment, 12 competitors who had not gone to bed when they should have, and a creme brulee station that Dorothy Lindquist had just declared to be the finest she had encountered outside of Lyon, France, which she had never visited, but felt she knew through reputation.
Daisy, what are we entering?
I'm going to taste everything slowly and decide what this buffet is trying to tell us.
So the interpretive event.
Every meal is a conversation, Chuck. This one just has more to say.
Ruby May, are you coming to the shuffleboard deck, or would you rather start here?
I'll be there in 5 minutes. I want to try that bread pudding first. It is sitting in a warm bath of bourbon sauce, and it is calling my name specifically.
Now, if you wanted to understand Dorothy Lindquist, you had to watch her at a dessert table. Not eating, not yet. Assessing. She moved along the display with the systematic patience of a woman who had fed 200 people at a time for 35 years of church suppers, and she had opinions about every dish that hadn't asked for them.
The tiramisu is properly chilled. You can see the mascarpone is set, not runny. Points for that. The chocolate mousse is a little over-whipped. You can see where the peaks have gone stiff. The creme brulee, perfect. Thin crust, even char. Whoever did this trained somewhere serious.
Ma'am, do you work in pastry?
I'm a retired county nurse, but I've been baking since I was 7. It shows different things, but both teach you to pay attention.
Meanwhile, at the far end of the dessert table, a quieter and more structural operation was underway. Sal DeLuca had taken a plate and was building something that the laws of physics had not approved. A slice of tiramisu. Beside it, a ramekin of creme brulee balanced on the tiramisu's corner. A wedge of chocolate cake angled against the ramekin for support. A row of profiteroles along the outer edge, functioning as a retaining wall. And at the very summit, somehow, a curl of candied orange peel, placed with the care of a man setting a flag on a mountain he had climbed for reasons that were entirely his own.
Sal, what is happening on that plate?
This is not a plate, Connie. This is an entry. The architecture division.
You're going to eat all of that.
I'm going to eat all of that. The eating is part of the event.
The crew member who had been on dessert station duty that evening had been watching all of this with growing wonder. He was 22 years old, 6 months into his first contract, and nothing in his training had prepared him for a retired salesman from New Jersey constructing a structural dessert monument at 11:15 at night while a retired nurse critiqued the mousse.
The bread pudding. Oh, that's right. Bourbon sauce, real vanilla, and they've put a little black pepper in. That's the move. The pepper. You wouldn't think it, but it lifts the whole thing.
Pepper.
You always get it, Gus. You always get it right away.
Dorothy, may I ask, from a purely structural standpoint, does the bread pudding hold together under lateral pressure? I'm asking for the architecture division.
Walter, you can't eat architectural data. Step back. Let the professionals work.
He's been a salesman for 40 years, and he talks about dessert like he's building a bridge. I have made peace with this.
Past the desserts was the pasta station, and Connie DeLuca had been standing in front of the marinara for 3 full minutes without putting anything on her plate. She held a ladle, she smelled the sauce, and she set it down again with the expression of a woman who had come a very long way from home.
Connie, you okay?
It smells almost right. It's a good sauce. It's fine.
It's not your mother's.
Nothing is my mother's. That's not a complaint. That's just a fact.
And then something happened, the way things happen at this table. Somebody said one true sentence, and the whole group slowed down and leaned in because they had learned that a true sentence from Connie DeLuca was worth listening to.
What was your mother's like?
Okay. All right. You want the sauce story? I'll give you the sauce story.
She set down the ladle and turned to face them, all of them, the way a woman does when she has decided to really tell something.
My mother. Mrs. Rosaria Ferrara, before she married my father, started her Sunday gravy on Saturday night. Not Sunday morning, Saturday night. You could smell it from the stairwell before you even got to our floor. The whole building knew it was Sunday at the Ferraras by what the hallway smelled like.
This is exactly right. This is how it's supposed to be.
The rule in our house was nobody touches the pot. Not my father, not me, not the cat. The pot was my mother's, and the pot was sacred. You could look at it. You could not touch it.
She picked up a breadstick from the basket beside her and held it like a prop.
So I'm 10 years old, and my father has said one evening that the sauce could use more kick. More kick. Those were his words. I hear this. I think, I can help. I go to the pantry and I find a jar of red pepper flakes. A big jar, a commercial jar, the kind you order for a restaurant. And I add them to the pot. All of them.
Connie.
I know. I know what I did.
Oh, honey.
We had peanut butter sandwiches for Sunday dinner that year. My mother stood there. She tasted it. She looked at me and she said, nothing. Not one word of anger. She just said, next Sunday, you make it yourself.
And
I did. I made it from scratch, the way she'd showed me 100 times without me ever paying attention, because I thought I already knew. I cooked it all Saturday night. My mother came in twice to check. She didn't say anything, just looked.
The group was quiet. Even Buck, who was constitutionally incapable of silence, did not say a word.
The next Easter, I found out she'd served my sauce to the whole family without telling anyone it was mine. My Aunt Giuseppina said it was the best batch Ma had ever made. My mother looked at me across the table and winked. That was the whole review. That wink.
That is the best cooking story I have ever heard. And I grew up in a kitchen.
Rosaria Ferrara. She knew. She always knew.
She knew everything, Sal. She just let you think you figured it out yourself. That was her whole method.
Shortly after midnight, the company moved operations to the pool deck, an open-air expanse of warm teak. 2 pools lit pale turquoise from below, a bar that was still serving, and the Atlantic, which had gone so still and glassy it looked like something you could walk on. The night air was warm in a way that Atlantic nights are not supposed to be in January, and this seemed to please everybody. But nobody more than Chuck Holloway, who stood at the railing with his face turned into the warm wind and an expression of pure physical gratitude.
Daisy, my knees, listen to my knees.
What are they saying?
They're saying nothing. That's the miracle. No grinding, no clicking, no editorial commentary about the weather. They've just gone quiet. I haven't heard this kind of silence out of these knees since 1987.
It's the warm air and the salt and the fact that you're finally not doing anything dangerous. Your knees have been asking for this for 40 years.
Daisy Holloway, long graying hair, a flower tucked in it, bracelets that announced her arrival from across a room, had meanwhile placed both palms flat on the warm railing and closed her eyes, which meant she was doing something the rest of the group had learned to wait out rather than interrupt.
This pool has very generous energy, very open. It's been receiving a lot of joy today. Children in the afternoon, and now us. It knows the difference, but it doesn't mind either one.
Daisy, it is a swimming pool on a boat.
Everything holds what happens to it, Connie. Water, most of all.
I'm not going to win this argument.
Nobody wins it. You just arrive at it when you're ready.
At the pool bar, a curved teak structure with fairy lights along the awning, a barman was packing up his station for a quieter moment in the evening. He looked up to see 12 people of retirement age arriving with the collective energy of people who had just come from somewhere fun and were headed somewhere funner.
Son, what have you got that's cold and talks to you?
I've got a mango cooler that's a full conversation.
12 of those, or whatever everybody wants. Marco, you're the announcer. Announce the drinks.
The pool deck relay commences. Discipline, tropical beverages under a warm Atlantic sky. Judges, frankly, everyone is a judge.
This man was born for this job.
Mrs. Calhoun, I have been waiting for this job for 15 years. The Olympics was a gift.
Marco, honey, what do you do all the other nights on this ship? When we're all in bed like sensible people?
I walk the decks. I make sure the lights are all on. I check that the stars are arranged correctly.
And are they?
Tonight, Dr. Washington, tonight they are perfect.
The shuffleboard court was on the promenade deck, a long painted lane with numbered scoring triangles at each end, lit by a row of deck lamps that gave the whole thing the warm amber quality of something from another era. Earl Washington looked at it the way he looked at most things, with patience and without hurry. Walter Whitfield beside him was already measuring.
The court is 45 feet. The ship is moving at 18 knots, heading approximately south-southwest. The deck has a very slight longitudinal pitch. I'd estimate 3/4 of a degree, which means a shot aimed at 8 o'clock accounts for drift and lands closer to the 10-point triangle. I've been working on the formula.
Walter, have you played shuffleboard before?
I have not, but the physics are straightforward.
Walter took his first shot with the careful deliberateness of a man implementing a formula. He pushed the cue, released at exactly the angle his notepad specified, and watched the disc travel approximately 6 feet before stopping entirely in the middle of the court, as though it had changed its mind.
HM, the friction coefficient on this surface, is higher than I estimated.
Walter, buddy, you put a whole page of math into that and it went 6 feet.
I'm recalibrating.
His second shot, armed with revised coefficients, left the court entirely and came to rest against a deck chair 3 feet to the right of the scoring zone. Walter looked at this for a long moment.
The ship's yaw is affecting the lateral component. I hadn't accounted for yaw.
Darling, let Earl go.
Earl Washington stepped up to the line. He picked up the cue with the same hands that had set broken bones at 3 in the morning for 40 years, unhurried, deliberate, already knowing what he was going to do before he did it. He didn't measure anything. He looked down the court once, and he pushed. The disc traveled the full length of the court in a smooth, undeviating line, and came to rest squarely on the 10.
How did you do that?
I looked at where I wanted it to go. Then I sent it there.
That's not a method, that's a description.
Most things worth doing are, Walter.
Earl Washington, the undefeated champion of the Shuffleboard deck. Ruby May, are you watching this man?
I'm watching him. I've been watching him 52 years. He does everything this way. He just looks at what he wants and goes straight at it. I have never once seen it fail.
Walter, dear, Earl just taught you something your formulas couldn't. I want you to think about that.
I am thinking about it. I'm going to go think about it with another shot.
He did. It went off the court again. But he was smiling this time because Walter Whitfield had recognized at 80 years old that some things are worth learning from the beginning, even if the beginning is 6 feet and a lot of friction. A little past midnight, the pool deck had gone quiet. The other passengers had drifted off to bed. The two pools glowed their steady turquoise under the dark sky, and the Atlantic, still flat and warm and improbably close, moved past the ship in long, slow swells that you felt more than heard. Ruby Mee Washington sat on the edge of the smaller pool, shoes off, feet in the water. She was not doing anything in particular. She was just sitting, the way a woman sits who has spent her whole life moving, organizing, teaching, conducting, and has finally, at 73 on the Atlantic Ocean, given herself permission to stop for a minute and simply be somewhere.
This water is warm. Earl, the water is genuinely warm. Come put your feet in.
I am sitting right here with my shoes on.
52 years, and the man has never once put his feet in water that wasn't for a specific purpose. Earl, feet in. That's an order.
And Earl Washington, unflappable, unhurried Earl, who had delivered 3,000 babies and set 4,000 bones without once raising his voice, sat down beside his wife and took his shoes off, and put his feet in, and said nothing, because some things do not require comment. Ruby Mee started humming. She couldn't help it. It was simply what happened when she sat still long enough. Something musical rose up from wherever she kept it and came out quietly without announcement. A low, warm, wandering melody. And one by one the others drifted over. Not because anyone invited them. Just because that's what happens with Ruby Mee's music. It pulls people toward it the way a fireplace pulls people toward warmth.
Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop.
I'm not stopping. I never stop.
Up on the deck above, the observation walkway that ran along the upper level, two figures appeared. Prescott Van Horn III, in his navy blazer and his salmon ascot, had come looking for a quiet place to read. He had instead found 12 people sitting around a glowing pool while a woman hummed something that had no name but sounded like the kind of thing your grandmother might have hummed in the kitchen on a Sunday morning when she thought nobody was listening.
Muriel, this is not what I would call quiet. No, Prescott, it isn't.
There is a perfectly good reading room on deck 7.
There is.
Prescott did not move. He stood at the railing above the pool and looked down at the company below, at the glowing water and the warm night, and the woman who was now humming something that had started to sound like a hymn, or possibly a lullaby, or possibly both. As such things often are at midnight on the ocean when you are standing still long enough to hear them.
Prescott, dear, we could just stand here a moment.
He didn't answer, but he didn't leave. And Muriel Van Horn, who had been married to this man for 40 years and had learned to read everything he did not say, folded her hands on the railing and stood beside him and watched, because she had been waiting a long time for him to stand still long enough to hear something. On the far side of the pool deck, there was a late-night grill station, a casual counter where the kitchen kept burgers and hot dogs running for the night owls and the insomniacs, and the people who had been at the midnight buffet and somehow come out the other side still hungry. At this hour it was tended by a single crew member, a young man named Jose, who was 20 years old and having the worst 40 minutes of his week. One of the grill burners had gone uneven. The left side ran hot, the right side caught and quit. He'd called the galley. He'd tried every setting on the panel. He had 4 orders waiting. He was, in the quiet, technical language of his profession, stuck. Gus Lindquist drifted over. Nobody asked him to. He didn't say anything as he came. He just stood beside the young man, looked at the grill for a moment, crouched down and looked at the connection panel at the back and said what he said.
Thermocouple, dirty contacts.
Sir, I don't. You really shouldn't touch the...
Got a toothpick?
The crew member, out of sheer bewilderment, produced a toothpick from a small tin he kept in his apron. Gus accepted it with a nod. He crouched back down, worked at the contact point for about 45 seconds with the patient focus of a man who had fixed 100 gas lines on a Minnesota dairy farm in weather that made the Atlantic look like a pleasant afternoon, and he straightened up. The burner caught both sides, even and steady.
Sir, how did you? Are you an engineer?
Dairy farmer. Gas lines, too.
I'm going to put you in my phone as emergency contact.
We all have his number. We just call it Gus. He fixes everything. I have been watching him do it for 50 years. He never makes a big thing of it. He just sees something broken and he fixes it.
Seems right.
By now, a small audience had collected Sal, who was on his second pass through the burger station and had thoughts about the seasoning. Loretta, who had sat down at a nearby table and was calmly eating a hot dog with the calm of a woman who had decided that after midnight the rules about dinner rolls and dignity were suspended. And Marco Bellini, who had been taking notes all night and now wrote something in his notepad.
Mr. Lindquist Buffett Olympics Mechanical Division. First place, obviously, unanimous.
Didn't know there was a mechanical division.
There is now.
Gus, the burgers on this grill. Can you smell the seasoning? There's something off. I think it's the ratio of the spice blend. I want you to meet the galley chef.
Sal, it's past midnight.
Flavor doesn't sleep, Gus. Flavor doesn't sleep.
He's right, Gus. I've been saying it for years. Come on, they'll be very polite, and we can look at the bread situation while we're in there.
And Gus Lindquist, the most quietly competent man on the Via Oceanus, allowed himself to be led toward the galley at 12:30 in the morning by his wife and a man from New Jersey who had strong feelings about burger seasoning. Because after 50 years of marriage, some battles have already been decided. By 1 in the morning, the group had thinned and scattered in the way of all late nights, some still at the pool, some at the bar, Marco somewhere conducting his private inspection of the stars. But a handful had drifted to the outer promenade deck, where the railing ran along the side of the ship, and the Atlantic lay close and dark and utterly enormous in the warm night. Buck stood at the rail with his hat off, which was unusual, holding it in both hands in front of him like a man at a funeral or a man at a blessing, and looking out at where the water met the sky in a line so dark and flat and perfect it looked painted.
What are you looking at?
Just the size of it, honey. Just the size.
And that was all he said, which for Buck Calhoun was something close to a record. Dorothy Lindquist was sitting on a deck chair nearby, shoes off, feet tucked up under her cardigan. She'd been quiet for a few minutes, which was unusual for Dorothy, whose quiet was usually the kind that preceded a recipe recommendation or a nursing diagnosis. But this was a different quiet, the looking back kind.
Dorothy, have you ever actually been in a cooking competition, like official?
Oh, Lord, yes. Once. The Hartley Lutheran Ladies Spring Social. It must have been 1979. Annual pie contest. Every woman in that church brought her best pie. Mrs. Olson brought her lemon meringue, which was a thing of genuine beauty. I want to be fair about that. Pastor Heinrich's wife brought a strawberry rhubarb that took third at the county fair.
And what did you bring?
I brought my cream of mushroom hot dish.
A silence that had several things in it.
Dorothy, it was a pie contest.
I know that now. I did not know it then. I thought it was the spring potluck. I read the flyer wrong. In my defense, the flyer said Spring Social Bake-Off, and I baked a hot dish, so technically...
Technically, you brought a casserole to a pie contest.
I brought my best dish. That happens to be what was asked for. The casserole was magnificent. I want that on the record.
What happened?
Well, the judges, 3 ladies from the church council, they tasted everything. They got to me. They looked at each other. They looked at the hot dish. One of them said very carefully, "Dorothy, this is delicious, but it isn't a pie." And I said, "I know, Elaine, but it's better than a pie." And she thought about it for a long moment, and then she said, "You know what? It really is."
What happened with the prize?
They gave me a special ribbon. Most useful. They made it that afternoon out of a blue grosgrain they had in the back room. I still have it. On the refrigerator. Right next to Gus's 4-H ribbon from 1965, which he won for a heifer named Margaret.
Good heifer.
The next year, they added a savory category to the bake-off. On account of me. I won that too, with the same hot dish.
Dorothy Lindquist, you accidentally invented a category and then dominated it.
I just brought what I had, Loretta. I always just bring what I have.
And Buck, who had been looking at the ocean the whole time, said nothing. But he put his hat back on, which meant, in the language of Buck Calhoun, that he felt right with the world. By 1:30, by the kind of gravity that good company creates, 8 of them had found their way up to the crow's nest, the glass-walled cocktail lounge at the top of the ship. At this hour it was nearly empty, one couple quietly sharing a nightcap at the far end, and behind the bar, Reggie Audiobook polishing a glass with the methodical patience of a man who was not going to sleep for another hour, and had long since made his peace with that. He looked up when they came in. He looked at the group, 8 of the 12, flushed with the warm night and the late hour and whatever had just happened at the pool, and he set the glass down.
You look like people who have been doing something they will be happy they did. What do you need?
Reggie, partner. Something for the closing ceremony. Something that says we've been out in the warm Atlantic night, and we've earned whatever comes next.
Sit down, I know what you need.
He made something he called the After Midnight, quieter than the Table 7 cocktail from the night before, with the amber weight of aged bourbon and something cold and slightly sweet underneath it, and a long float of something dark that settled on top like the last hour of a good evening. He set 8 of them on the bar without being asked how many.
Mr. Audiobook, how did you know how many of us were coming?
Mrs. Whitfield, in 11 years I have never once seen a table start an adventure and not end up at a bar. It's a law of the sea.
That's not a formal law. I'd like to see the literature.
Sir, it is the most consistent thing I've observed in a decade. I'd put it ahead of gravity in terms of reliability.
Reggie, what do you think we won tonight, honestly?
Honestly, you won the late hour, which is the only thing worth winning after midnight. The day has to work for it. The late hour is a gift. You did the right things and the ship rewarded you.
See? He understands. Reggie, you understand this.
I understand most things, MS Holloway. I have 11 years of late hours to draw on.
Reggie, can I ask you something? Do you ever get tired of making drinks for strangers?
Every table that comes in thinks it's a stranger to me. By the time they leave, it generally isn't. Table 7 is the fastest I've ever seen it happen, for what that's worth.
Reggie, that is genuinely one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to us.
Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation for being cynical.
We won't breathe a word.
And they sat there for a while in the crow's nest at 1:30 in the morning, with the after-midnight cocktails and the black Atlantic and the starlight, and nobody said anything urgent, because nothing urgent remained. They had given the evening everything it asked for, and the evening had given it back doubled. At 2 in the morning, the official closing hour of the pool deck, Marco Bellini called the company together for the closing ceremony of the first annual Via Oceanus Buffet Olympics. They gathered near the now quiet buffet, tired in the warm way of people who have been up past their bedtime for entirely good reasons. Marco had his notepad. Buck had his hat at its most ceremonial angle, and Sal DeLucas had over the course of the evening, acquired from the dinner rolls he'd been provisioning since before dinner a total of 11 rolls, which he now produced from his jacket with the calm of a man delivering a prepared statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, athletes, champions, the judges have conferred. The medals are ready. Mr. Calhoun, I defer to you as founding president of the Olympics.
Thank you, Marco. First and foremost, Sal DeLuca.
Present.
Provisioning Division. Gold. Without question, without debate, unanimous.
I would like to thank my jacket, which has 4 interior pockets, and my wife, who has spent 50 years pretending not to notice.
I have always noticed. I just stopped saying anything in 1987.
Dorothy Lindquist. Dessert analysis and creme brulee assessment. Gold. Expert Division. The judges note that her commentary improved the evening's understanding of dessert structurally, thermally, and emotionally.
I just said what I saw.
Gus Lindquist, Mechanical Division. Ladies and gentlemen, I am adding a new category. Platinum. We didn't have platinum before tonight. Gus invented it.
Didn't do anything.
He fixed the grill with a toothpick at 12:30 in the morning. He absolutely did something.
Walter Whitfield, Theoretical Physics Division. Silver. The judges note that his methodology was rigorous, his results were inconsistent, and his reaction to losing to Earl was the most educational thing anyone observed all evening.
I want it noted for the record that I've identified 3 sources of systematic error in my approach and intend to correct them tomorrow.
There he is. There's my Walter.
Earl Washington, Practical Excellence Division. Gold. He looked at where he wanted the disc to go and sent it there. That's the whole thing. That's the whole speech.
I appreciate the economy.
Connie DeLuca, Storytelling Division. Gold. The gravy story alone was worth the whole evening. The sauce, with the pepper, the wink.
I'm going to tell my mother's ghost that she won a dinner roll at 2 in the morning on an ocean liner. She would have loved that. She would have absolutely loved that.
And Buck distributed the medals, 1 dinner roll each, from Sal's jacket, pressed into each pair of hands with the gravity of a man who understood that the currency of a good evening was whatever you had on you at the end of it.
Buck, you are giving everyone bread that Sal provisioned from the dining room.
Provisioned.
Loretta, honey, it is 2 in the morning. We're on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, and everyone here has a gold medal and a dinner roll. I genuinely cannot think of a better ending.
And she smiled, which was in the economy of Loretta Calhoun a full endorsement. The morning after the buffet Olympics had a particular quality, the quality of mornings after nights that were worth staying up for. The dining room was golden with early sun. The Atlantic outside the window had gone from its midnight black to a deep dancing blue. And table 7 was being set by Antonio with the private, patient care he brought to everything, straightening each fork as though the fork mattered, because to him it did. They arrived 1 by 1 and 2 by 2, Gus first as always, because dairy farmers do not sleep past 5 regardless of what ocean they are on. Dorothy right behind him. Then Earl, then Ruby Me, who came in with fresh lipstick and the serene energy of a woman who had slept 4 hours and felt it was plenty.
Good morning, Table 7. I understand the Olympics were a success.
Word travels.
Mr. Bellini submitted his official results at 2:15 this morning. I have them here. I want you to know that in 30 years at sea, this is the first time I have received an official Olympic report at 2:15 in the morning. I consider it an honor.
Walter arrived with a leaner, and Walter had his notepad open, which a leaner clocked from 10 feet away.
Walter, it is 7 in the morning.
I've been working on the lateral drift correction since 5:30. The yaw component was more significant than I accounted for. I think I have it.
You've been up since 5:30, working on shuffleboard physics.
Alina, Earl beat me with no method at all. At no point in my career has someone beat me with no method at all.
Then perhaps no method is a method.
That is irritatingly plausible.
Buck came in last, which surprised nobody, with his hat on, and his shirt somehow more Western than the night before, as though he'd chosen it specifically for a morning that deserved a celebration. He looked at the table, at the people in their chairs with their coffee cups, at the Atlantic outside the window in the early morning blue.
You know what this is?
It is breakfast, Buck.
It is the best table on this ship. Antonio told me so, but I didn't need him to tell me.
I believe I said it was my favorite table, Mr. Calhoun.
Antonio, on this ship, your favorite and the best are the same thing.
And the morning settled around them the way mornings do when the night before was a good one, easy and warm, and full of the unhurried pleasure of people who know they have somewhere to be and are already there. The ship moved south through the brightening Atlantic. The next port was still days away, and at table 7 the coffee was hot and the company was right, and nobody was in any hurry at all. Next time aboard the Via Oceanus, the ship is barely 2 days out of Miami when Ruby Mee Washington notices a woman sitting alone on the evening deck. Quiet, well-dressed, watching the water the way people watch it when they've been carrying something a long time, and the ocean is the first thing big enough to hold it. Ruby Mee has 40 years of knowing when someone has a story they haven't told anyone, and this woman has been waiting 30 years for 12 strangers who might be the right ones to hear it. Thanks so much for sailing with us. If this company made you smile tonight, give this one a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next port, and share it with a friend who'd save you a seat. And tell us in the comments who won the Buffet Olympics in your book. See you next time. You've been at table 7 aboard the Via Oceanus, where a midnight buffet became an Olympic Games, a dairy farmer fixed a grill with a toothpick, and 12 good friends discovered that the best medal is a dinner roll from someone else's jacket. Fair winds. We'll see you at sea. Thank you for sailing these miles of our cruise, along with our characters. See you in the next port. To be continued.